everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm sorry for the short delay. And thank you, Liana. Thank you for this wonderful conversation that you had earlier. And I think that we've heard a lot of amazing insights from this morning and yesterday for anyone that's been here already. And I think it's the absolute perfect timing to discuss security and ethics with innovating with AI, because AI and generative AI is all the frenzy right now. So, Mr. Primpas, I'm going to start with you. If you could please ease us into this session. Could you paint us a picture? What is the current state of AI adoption in businesses and the public sector today?
Thank you for the question. First of all, let's understand what is AI and how it transforms the business. AI, and especially generative AI, is based on language models. So we have created large language models right now. It's all the known ones worldwide in the market, which are trained by data. And then after these models, in order to be used on the enterprises, we have to tune and adopt them on the real use cases that will be enabled within the enterprises. So having this data and these models available, right now we have to manage three risks. The first is how are the data that we have trained the models are available. So they have to be open data. And then they need to be enterprise and industry-specific data in order to be more accurate. And the second thing is how we use these models and how we embed them within the industries and the business model of each company. Mm-hmm. In this area, right now we have already available some generic use case, I would say, that we have seen in the market and we have all our companies deployed. Many of them are in terms of marketing, in the area of marketing. There are many use cases that can use AI on the HR. There are use cases that we use AI with customer support, with customer interaction. So we see this adoption on the public sector, also on the financial services, in order to enhance the way they cooperate and they interact with their clients. But the most interesting thing is when we will see more industry-specific use cases that actually will transform the way that the companies right now they operate.
Is this in the immediate future?
There are right now many use cases that also IBM is working worldwide. Some of them, for example, are on the life science and the pharma industry that we're creating models that will work together with pharma companies for the design of new drugs or on this area. Also, there are other ones on the financial services for fraud detection. Or there are other ones on the oil and gas and on the manufacturing with predictive and maintenance for assets that they have within the manufacturing segment. So there are industry-specific use cases that they will really transform how right now the enterprises work and execute. In order to be able to gain the best out of this, we need to have the business data and the industry data within the models. Mm-hmm. So the biggest challenge right now that we will see is how we'll take all these LLMs, large language models, how we'll tune them, or how we'll augment them, or how we use smaller language models that will have the industry-specific data and the company-specific data that will be enabled to unlock all these use cases for the companies.
Thank you, Mr. Primpas, and I'm going to get back to you on that, sure. But now I want to go to Mr. Athanassopoulos. You've entered Olympia Group about a year ago, maybe a year and 3 months. 3 months, yeah. During this time, Olympia Group, besides all the industries that it has been involved in, it partnered with EmTech Capital, for anyone who doesn't know, to acquire Intrasoft. And then more recently, I think 3 or 4 months ago, it had the marriage with SoftOne. So right now, the aim is to become a leader in business software. My question is, why did you invest in it? What did you see? What were the prospects there?
First of all, thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
Those that they watched the previous presentation, perhaps they feel a sudden drop, because now we are talking about much more maybe boring stuff compared to AI, religion, and regeneration of our relatives from the past. Nevertheless, we have to face, to come back to 2025. Last year, yes, we, as a group, we had already invested into SoftOne. We acquired Entersoft. We are in a path to integrate both. We play a quite significant role on the small and medium enterprises with regards to business management software. And obviously, we are participating to all this global phenomenon of making bigger teams towards that direction. So far, it's just an M&A response. However, there's something more to that. We think we have a responsibility in two dimensions. One dimension has to do with us being the long arm of a major digital transformation that takes place today in countries like Greece, whereby the state, as a matter of fact, is one step ahead and is pushing all this transformation, financial transformation, tax transformation, and unless our company and another one were existing in this country, all these measures couldn't take place in the small enterprises, because the small enterprises do not have capital to, or perhaps it's not appropriate to get into the large software space. Now, the second dimension has to do with AI. AI, at the moment, is primarily at the hands of large-scale enterprises or research enterprises. What we are working on, and we are deploying it, is to embed AI within our products, because we sell products, we don't sell consulting for the small enterprises. And therefore, many of our clients have access to AI to solve their problems via the products. We call that democratization of AI. And we consider that being extremely important, being a very small enterprise with maybe 50 employees or 30 employees, having the products like ERP products or warehouse management products, and being able to access extension to the functionality without being a wizard on AI in order to do your job better. And I think in the long term, our ability to give the product version of AI, not only the experimental version, will determine the competitiveness of the small side of business without these people being left outside the mega transformation and revolution that takes place in the outside world. So part of our investment is not just to take two companies, make them one, and try to grow, but take two companies and lead what is happening in the outside world, especially in the revolution of AI that we experience today. And we all strive to make it real, because there's a lot of hype in this area, and we have to find a way to separate hype from reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Athanassopoulos. Mr. Manos, I'm guessing that you have a lot to comment on that, but I want to pivot to another issue here, ethics, which is really important, and maybe it's important to the democratization that Mr. Athanassopoulos said earlier. As Intrasoft, Netcompany-Intrasoft, have you had any examples, AI solutions where you implemented in the Greek public sector using ethical applications?
Before we jump into the discussion of particular examples, which we have, and based on, if we, as I was looking at the presentation before, and everything that is coming up, and again, it wasn't the first time that we see what's in store for us, but every time you see it, it becomes even more real, I think, for everybody, and that just created a very large number of questions, at least in my head. The number one was, and I'll park it, what am I going to suggest to my kids to study, given the way the world is going to look in a few years? But that I didn't get a chance to ask Danilo. But I'll move to the second one when so much of our daily life, so much of what we do and what we work with is handed over to these AI systems, the question of ethics really comes into play, right? And how reliable these systems are, how ethical these systems are, how responsible these systems are. And I think that's not just a moral imperative. It is actually a practical necessity to consider when building these systems. If you look at it a different way, what would unethical AI systems create? They would definitely create public discontent. They would definitely create loss of trust in these systems. And they would also, I think, they would also make people much more concerned in using this great technology in their daily life. Furthermore, if you think about the regulations in Europe, of course, there will be penalties when that's broken. So it's a practical consideration on how you bring in ethics in these systems and how you build these systems using an ethical framework. We have thought long and hard on this, and of course, on how to operationalize ethics, where you see that organizations should establish a clear and concise ethical framework, which is going to be overarched by a governance framework that ensures that everything is done with accountability, with transparency, with fairness. I think we need to, and that's what we do, but I just think we need to move from the way we develop systems today to ethical systems by design and secure systems by design. So when we start building, all the ethical considerations need to be taken into account from the very first steps, and we need to put in all the security protocols at each stage to make sure that the systems will be secure throughout its life cycle. As Dimitris mentioned before, of course, that starts with the data, right? The data that we use to train our models. It needs to be diverse. It needs to be representative of the group. We need to make sure that we avoid having data that contains harmful bias to train the models. And then, of course, we need to think of the algorithms that we're going to put in place. How do you build mechanisms for transparency and explainability? When you get an answer, you would like to understand how that answer was derived. What was the chain of thought that the algorithm followed in order to come up with this answer? That would make you trust it even more, right? How can we incorporate safeguards against adversarial attacks and malignant use of these algorithms? And how can we design all these systems to prioritize fairness and accountability? So we've been thinking about these things, and of course we had to think very fast because everything is moving really fast. And since last year, we have, in Denmark, we have actually spearheaded a partnership between financial companies, between public organizations, and between legal offices in order to put together a white paper which basically is an assistant, it's a guidebook for any company or any public organization that wants to build a digital assistant. And we have made that public, and it's on our website, and anybody can download it and use it. Through this, we make sure that all the latest technical advancements, the organizational issues, and all the framework issues, the legal framework issues, including the EUI Act and the GDPR, are taken into account from scratch, from the beginning of development of these systems. So in that sense, we put a lot of effort and a lot of attention in this very critical part of developing AI systems from the very beginning, and we feel that through such actions, and we can discuss more about this later on, through such actions, we can actually accelerate the adoption of artificial intelligence, but also make sure that it is safe, it is fast, and it is fair and non-discriminatory.
You've said a lot of keywords here, but I'm going to get back to you because you didn't answer to my question about the Greek public sector.
Yes, and I'll bring all that into play.
Yeah, and because I wanted to add on what Mr. Papasteriou said earlier, and it's very interesting. But before we go to that, Mr. Gikopoulos, I'm going to turn to you because we have here representatives from the business world in Greece and from the applications that have been on the Greek public sector. What are the differences in the applications, the AI applications between these two worlds, business and public sector?
Thank you. So, first of all, thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome.
Good morning to everybody. Many thanks to your delegates for listening and putting up with us. Many thanks to esteemed colleagues. It's always an honor and very humbling to be in the presence of people representing global and regional giants in the area of technology. So thank you very much. Now, looking at the differences, but also the similarities between public sector and private sector, not so much businesses and public sector. I think the boundaries between business and public sectors is blurring. I think it's much more of who the end user is and whether the end user is paying directly or indirectly for the service that they're actually receiving. Now, just to add to the sequence of new technologies or rather how AI is developing these days, it's become clear that we're at the stage, not age. AI is changing so very rapidly that an age in AI could be a few months of agentic AI solutions. The key difference in agentic AI solutions and traditional could be 9 months ago, is that agentic AI solutions tend to be proactive, not just reactive, in the way that they communicate with the end user. Now, having agentic AI solutions makes it much easier for users within the public and private sector to identify use cases that need to be deployed. Any type of need that is currently a business request, is currently a public sector request, can be, to a certain extent, answered through an agentic AI solution. Now, what is the difference? I think that the first and biggest difference is the fact that, at least in the last few years, there's been an abundance of resources coming into the public sector that has actually made the public sector a leader in AI adoption. This is a very interesting and differentiating characteristic of what we might have been seeing, 10 or 15 years ago, not in terms of the AI.
You were talking about global scale, right?
Correct. I think there's also a reflection to what is happening here in Greece, right? We might be at the end of this curve, but we're still seeing very similar characteristics. The public sector is trying to be at the forefront of adopting AI technologies. Now, the private sector is always looking for the establishment of a business case and prioritizing what they need to implement. So in certain cases, they are coming second or they're lagging in the decision making, but the ultimate use case tends to be much higher value creating because it's been designed, it's been thought of in order to solve a problem that is either costing money or creating money for those businesses. The final difference is that in terms of the private sector, the businesses, as you described them, the end SME, subject matter expert, that is involved in actually creating that specific agentic or AI in general use case tends to be much closer to the development versus the public sector. So again, the use, the everyday use, the testing that is being done in the private sector tends to be much more diligent. Therefore, the end result ends up being much more practical, and the way we're calling it much more applied in terms of its use.
Thank you. Thank you. That has been actually very interesting. Mr. Manos, now you owe me your solution.
Okay. So yeah, we have done a few. I think one of the biggest and most challenging of all was as part of a larger digital transformation project for the Greek Social Security Agency, for EFKA. We had to, or we have to, migrate a very large amount of data into the new system, okay? The task in hand was to identify insured people from paper payroll data that was going to be digitized, and then match this to the registry in order to be able to calculate their contribution record, right? So, and for that we had to use intelligent data processing in order to take the paper and payroll and digitize it and then try to extract all the useful information.
Out of curiosity, how long did this take?
It's not done.
Oh, it's
but,
not
But
done.
let me just say, it's interesting because everything now needs to be done in record time. And, you know, the way budgets were put together is not necessarily representative of the amount of work that had to be done. You actually find out as you move along the amount of work you have to do in order to deliver, rather than on the tendering stage. But anyway, this was definitely and still is one of the most challenging, I think, projects, and that's where we, it sounds like a challenge, but it's actually more than that, because we had even more obstacles on the way in order to make this happen. Obstacles starting from the fact that there was limited data availability, so most of these payroll sheets would only have a first name and last name, and they would usually not have a date of birth or the social security number. So you had no idea who this belonged to, okay? Then secondly, the first name and last name was placed in the same field, and many times it was vice versa, or it had more characters in between, and that in itself made it tougher to recognize. Then using IDP, some of the characters were not recognized properly, so you would get names all mixed up and basically jumble that you had to work through. And then of course there was a lot of redundant data within that payroll sheet that was digitized that we had to make sure that we got rid of so that we could keep what was actually needed. So we assigned this to the AI team, right? It sounds like an obvious thing to do because we didn't know what to do otherwise. And they came up with a number of steps where they used an assistant that we have put together easily it's called, in order to go through a number of steps that would automatically create these results. So, and I'll run through those steps. I'm sure I'm going to forget a few, but just to give you an idea of the work that needed to be done. First, we used Easily to generate code automatically in order to move all the interesting information from the digitized forms into a relational database. Okay, so that was a transformation. Then we again used Easily to write code that would validate the data that was put in the database and restructure it and get it ready for the processing side. Then we realized that as all the names were mixed or we had nicknames or whatever, then that we needed to create a library that would be used for matching, okay? So we again used Easily and a process called automatic content generation for recognition in order to create a thesaurus of Greek names and foreign names, make sure they're normalized, and we drew that data from the database that we just created, but also from the registry, right? Because the next step would be the matching. And then we converted all the names to the official form so we could compare. Next step is code automatically generated in order to compare, the usual data cleansing at the end and the check, and then finally putting together the history of every person together with their contributions and checking if those contributions are within limits, right? Somebody did not contribute 1 million euro in August of 1985. So we had to check and remove those. And we ran this for 440,000 pages. And the results were actually quite good. So the identification rate without using AI was somewhere between 50 and 60. And by using all this AI, we actually managed to get it over 70%. The accuracy was very much improved as well, but more importantly, the productivity. Yeah. We had a productivity and efficiency gain of over 30% throughout this process, which was fantastic news because we have another 37 million pages to go through for this project.
We're talking about colossal projects overall that take time and innovation. And this actually, I want to turn to Mr. Gikopoulos before I turn to the gentleman sitting further from me. Can we take a step back? How can you innovate? How can you create such AI solutions whilst ensuring data privacy and security?
Yeah. So I'll try to break that down in 3 areas. So the first one is data availability and whether privacy needs to be sacrificed in order to gather this information. Secondly, shared responsibility. And thirdly, regulation. So starting from the first point, data is increasingly becoming available. In certain cases, there's actually too much data. And if you actually look back into the entire DeepSeek situation where suddenly and overnight a large language model proved that it could come up with the same results at a fraction of the cost of more traditional, let's say Western LLMs. The key differentiation between the two was the clever and distinct use of data versus a much more carpet bombing type of, let's get all the data we need in order to come up with the right answer. So my first point is that data in today's world is much more abundant and much more readily available, which tends to put a slightly lower risk in terms of how data might be misused just for the sake of finding data. Second point, shared responsibility. And I've been a huge advocate of the dangers of oversharing or mis-sharing information and data from the individual's perspective, let alone what the business is actually looking for. The way that I explain that to myself, I'm a member of Generation X, and I fondly remember coming back from vacation and never having the urge to go into a living room and start setting photos of every meal that I had with my friends or every nice swimsuit that I wore during my vacation. That now is the norm. And everybody feels not just comfortable, but compelled to share that information. That's an analogy, but using that analogy, we need to be constantly aware of the shared responsibility that we have, all of us, in terms of the information that we give out to the world. Finally, regulation is coming in, and it should come in, and it's I would say, even late at the party, but the EU AI Act is a first step in terms of helping individuals and corporations manage information, manage data in a much more responsible way, but at the speed that AI is moving forward, unless we keep that shared responsibility in mind, the danger is always going to be there.
Yeah. Thank you for that, and I'm going to turn to Mr. Primpas now. From everything you've heard today, from everything that we've said here in this session, and from your expertise, what is the future? What does the future of AI solutions and models hold for us in terms of accuracy, cost, which is very important, and specialization? Because we've said, we've talked about ethics, abundance of data, speed, which is something common that you said here. What do you think?
Actually, this is the new era that we're coming right now. But in order to do in the new era with the new AI models, what you mentioned is the three big challenges that we have to address: cost, accuracy, and specialization. And I will explain why. First, right now we have available many LLMs, large language models. But in order to do the more transformative part on the enterprises, we'll need to have more industry data and more enterprise data from each enterprise there. So the big challenge that we have, all of the market and the clients and the consulting companies and also the technology providers, the big challenge that we have to solve right now is how we create either smaller language models specific for enterprises or for per industry, or how we'll augment some LLMs, we'll train some LLMs with a specific industry data and specific enterprise data that will provide this, the expected outcome, and how we'll do this governed by ethics, as Alex said in the previous question. It's one of the most important things that we need to manage. There are techniques, there are frameworks that we need to augment and put in place, but there is a specific plan and a specific roadmap that shows that we need to move to more trained models that will have the industry and also the enterprise data of each enterprise in order to be innovative. It is obvious and inevitable that the AI will transform also the way the enterprises are operating right now. So this means that the companies that will not invest on that maybe not be so competitive as the others that will invest in that part. And this means that we need to take into account many other elements as well, not only the AI or the technology cost for AI, but how we'll transform the workforce, how we'll reskill the people that are within the enterprise to use all these AI techniques. Also, as Andreas said, will be off-the-shelf products that will have embedded AI, so we need to train all the people, not only on the IT, on the business side of the companies, that will be able to consume these AI capabilities from off-the-shelf products, and how we'll combine them with wider enterprise data to taking more advantage. It's obvious that the cost compared to what is right now will be higher, but on the other hand, the return of investment that's expected to be done from these AI initiatives should be much higher. So at some point in time, in some years from now, the cost of AI should be at some point in time regained from the efficiencies and from the transformative things that will bring to the business that will pay off the actual AI cost.
Because this is a huge deal right now, the cost. You're saying at some point in time. What's your guess?
2 to 3 years.
That
But
short, yeah.
It has to, in some use cases, it has immediate return of investment. Although it's something that we need to consider on a holistic view, because we need to have all the companies and all the technology vendors and all the consulting companies are here in the market to help them, need to create a plan how they will move to the next era. And we need to take into account how it will transform the workforce that we have right now. Because part of the cost is not only the technology cost for the AI, but it's also the reskilling cost, is the cost to retain the right balance between the skilled people that we need for the traditional workloads and the new things on the AI, how we innovate with AI. So all this holistic approach should be taken into account.
Thank you, Mr. Primpas. And now, Mr. Athanassopoulos, because the time is running, if you can do us the honor to conclude this session. Olympia Group has a huge portfolio, okay? Has Sunlight, Energy, Public Group, Retail, and of course, as we said, Entersoft. where do you see, in which sector is there, do you see AI having the most transformative impact? Where do you see the most room to grow?
Well, if the investee companies, our companies were here, they would compete as we speak on who would be able to make the most out of AI. I think AI is industry agnostic. The way we perceive it is the following. As I said before, in the software industry, especially on the product-based software industry, we're trying to embed AI for our customers. So over there, the situation is very simple. We try to extend the capabilities of the product by enabling our customers to do more with what we have on the product. There are two other facets of our ecosystem. The second has to do with people. In the retail industry, effectively, with AI, you affect people, either your own sales force or the end customer. So what we're trying to enable over there is to give AI capabilities to our people when they interact with customers, being at the shop floor, being at the contact center, do whatever they do on everyday job, but do it better, faster, and much more accurate. So we have one dimension that has the product to enhance the product. The second dimension is to enhance people. Retail has to do with people. Even if you buy online, there are people behind, or those that they buy are people. So there's a second dimension, how to enable people. When it comes to manufacturing, in other words, Sunlight, we have to remember Sunlight is the biggest provider of battery solutions for industrial motive. 1 out of 3 batteries of forklifts around the world, the Western world, is enabled and powered by Sunlight. Over there, we have a fantastic world on how to enhance the product, the way we design the product, the way the product behaves, and I'll explain what I mean behaves, and how also we minimize costs. Let's move it to Sunlight. Sunlight, what's a battery? A battery is a circuit. A circuit, especially in the lithium battery, is a circuit that is a living organism. There are microchips within the battery. The microchips send signals, send data. And somebody takes this data, analyzes the data in order to prolong the battery life cycle, predict when a battery may fail. It's a fascinating world. If you are not careful enough, this exchange of data on the cloud is going to kill you. It's a very expensive exercise. So AI in itself does not have any future unless you connect it with the cloud, unless you connect with edge computing, which is, for some people, is a buzzword, for some other people is how to make AI affordable in order to make the battery a smarter battery. So therefore you have AI embedded within the product in order to make the product better. Obviously, within a manufacturing side, AI can help on preventive maintenance, on optimizing supply chains, in doing things better. I just want to take the opportunity, as the honorable friends are solution providers to a very large extent, and they interact with companies, but we are the company, or we represent some companies. The way AI has gone so far is we had too many people talking about what they are doing because they just want to shout, I'm here, we are also following the path. As AI is becoming more of a norm, you will see less companies talking about AI. The more they do, the less they talk. Why is that? Because a competitive advantage. Why would they share what exactly are they doing? If you ask me to give you details exactly what we're doing at Sunlight, I'm not going to tell you because this is part of the recipe going forward. And obviously this is a success to AI because AI at first was embedded within a subset of IT. Well, no, let's put it rightly. AI first was a syndrome of a CEO. The CEO was fascinated The CEO believed that AI is as strong as web, when web appeared. So start pushing IT, we need to do something here. The IT people realized that either they don't have the right data or they were scared about security. The security officer saying, watch what you are doing. So they said, wait to be organized. But there was a lot of push. As we moved and we partially resolved some of these problems, we haven't resolved them fully, then we engaged the business people. The problem with the business people is they don't know what they don't know many times. So you have to find translators. Translators between what the solutions are there and what the real problems are. And I think many organizations are at this mature level now to start realizing that there are problems that can be solved in an accelerated way. There are results that can be given in an accelerated way. I'll give you an example. In the marketing world, one of the famous stories, you send out emails to clients. The majority of people, unfortunately, they don't even bother to open them. So people measure the open-up rate, not the sales rate, the open-up rate. That's the big enemy. So you have very specialized marketeers who they write the text on the title of the email, the title. The title makes a difference. And then you have AI writing the same text. Guess who wins? It's AI that wins. The very experienced marketeers on writing a small phrase on the top of an email that you send out to clients. Yeah. When people see that, all of a sudden they realize there is value. And then they move to another step on how to build text, how to build content, and stuff like that. So I think, at least within our ecosystem, we're trying to work out some true priorities that are associated to business value, being enhancing the product, being enhancing the interaction with people, being enhancing the customers, the end customers, by giving them extra capability. This is I'm fortunate enough to have more data that I can imagine. I'm also unfortunate enough that everybody wants to do something, and we're just trying to put some frame because we have to comply with responsibilities, with ethical usage, with the very difficult interaction between GDPR and AI framework. The compliance framework and the regulatory framework between the two are not identical. There's a lot of work, and there are some white papers at the Commission that they're trying to work out all this unknown, difficult territory for all of us, because everybody wants the outcome, but nobody wants to give permission for things to happen with their own data.
I think that you gave us a topic for another conversation another day. Unfortunately, we don't have time. What I'm keeping is that AI is industry agnostic or resistant. And thank you for capping this session. And thank you, gentlemen, for all these wonderful insights. And I think right now we're going to have a recess. So yes, thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.